Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to view Chucky Season 2, Episode 5. So, I'm still feeling a little bit under the weather. I apologize for this. Sounds like a broken record. If I cough or sneeze or fart throughout this whole review, I apologize, but that is what it is. So, I'll grade this episode quickly into this one. This episode was freaking great. We, of course, are opening up 31 flavors Chucky in this episode. Or Chucky's now Baskin Robbins. So, we're having Chucky who's really giving us these, like, skewed versions of himself, which I think is really cool. But I get that it also could just be this, like, merchandising opportunity. Come to find out, because I had watched this on the Michael Rosenbaum's Inside of You video, where we had Tom Holland on there. Not the Spider-Man Tom Holland, the guy who invented a bunch of Tom Holland. The guy who was to go on and invent Fright Night and was to have wrote Psycho 2 and then went on to create a movie called Child's Play. You ever heard of it? Maybe? No? Didn't think so. Come to find out, Tom Holland is not getting a dime for any of this Chucky stuff. Tom Holland is not receiving any kind of residuals or nothing from this show. Because come to find out, one, like, that's probably why they shifted, instead of calling this Child's Play, to then Chucky, so that we can be a tweakingly different thing. But not only that, like, come to find out, we had Tom Holland who was to state, it's like, well, yeah, after 35 years, after this thing is to be out, like, it's kind of the fact that, like, the studio is to go on and own it instead of him owning it. So, yeah, like, I guess that's why you can go on and have, like, Warner Brothers going on and, like, having, like Space Jam Legacy and not need to pay, like, any of those freaking people for having all of those characters just slammed into a whole entire movie, or like Ready Player One, when we have these, like, huge massive Easter eggs of all these characters, because after X number of years, it's like, boom, like, there's another, like, Easter egg movie that they didn't have to pay a dime for anybody who was to have gone on and created any of these characters, because now the studio just owns it, which freaking sucks. So no merchandise sales, no nothing for the guy who created this character. And I was like, man. Hence why you would go on, you get, like, the John Carpenters, you get like James Cameron, who go on and direct Halloween, or in Cameron's case, Terminator, to try to somehow get new money out of the stuff that they had either written or originally done or whatever, because technically that thing was something that was theirs, or that was something they put on the map. And so I think guys like Cameron is to now own back the rights of Terminator. So whenever Cameron is to want to do a Terminator, like, he is to be the only one that has to say whether or not to do that or not, because he owns the rights back. So no one else is going to want to touch that but James Cameron. So with that said, excuse me, let's talk about this episode. So we're not only going back into the Jake, Devin, Lexi story, but we're also doing a little bit of the Glenn Tiffany story. I'm kind of getting a little annoyed though that like we're still going right back to the Liar Liar movie. Like it's really as if like they only have that to just showcase like Tilly's whole entire career is just based off of one scene of one movie and that's it. But again, we are also to reference stuff like Family Guy in this episode. But like, yeah, like she was on that show because, of course, like I watch Family Guy. Come to find out, like Stewie looks very similar to Chucky in a lot of ways, anyways. But so it's kind of funny. And Stewie also likes to kill people, anyways. So kill his mom. Anyways, no, I was not named after the Family Guy family. I don't know how many times I would hear that freaking when that show became popular. Oh, are you related to the animated family? The cartoon family? Is you like no. They're freaking cartoons. Does that make sense? Is anybody who has had the last name Simpson to be somehow connected to like Homer Simpson? No. You related to OJ Simpson? Probably not. Anyways, so a lot of tethers, a lot of rambling here. I apologize. But anyways, so we have this episode, of course, going back into Father Bryce trying to punish Devin. If we hadn't have done that in the other episode, it seems like we're continuing on that. But the real thing here is the question of whether or not that good Chucky is really all that good. Maybe he's just manipulating. Maybe it's a long con. Maybe he's waiting till somebody lets their guard down, and that's when the knife goes in. That's what I'm assuming. A lot of people can go on and just believe, like, oh no, like, this is the one good doll. No. Not for me. Like, I would rather be paranoid than be wrong. So, we also are to go on and find that Glenn is to start still having all these dreams and is to be texting Glenda about whether or not she is to have gone on and had these like memories or dreams also. And so come to find out when Tiffany is to still be watching Liar Liar for the 30th time, probably with just the same scene that they can only show on the show for some goofy reason. So the more that Glenn tries to get answers, the more it seems that finally Glenda will get her answers. Or that Glenn will finally get his Glenn's answers by this episode. And we'll also come to find out whatever happened to Tilly when Tiffany took over Tilly's body. So that is really interesting. So with that said, I think I'm just going to go on into double 5 time territory, just going to spoilers. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about this episode, whether you hated it, whether you liked it, whether you felt indifferent about it, because really, also looking at it, there's some people that may not have been as sold on the season as the first, for whatever reason. Not every episode I liked, I'll admit that, but and I also got really annoyed with the whole like Easter egg thing or the whole movie reference thing. I didn't think I caught any movie reference things in this episode. Let me know if you did, if you caught anything, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, like I guess yeah, I didn't realize that. I guess I didn't know that much about film." But so, with that said, let's go into the double five. It's about that time yet again to, of course, go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time you spoil this episode. So, in the beginning of this episode, let me kind of, from where we left off. Let's go into this. So, we have Macho Chucky going in a room with Good Chucky. Because the door ends up getting closed. And so we have Macho Chucky who's talking about, like, well, you know what, I don't like cream puffs, but hey, like, I can always have a cheat day. So we have Macho Chucky who just starts rolling out these knives, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna take these knives and I'm gonna do you in, but I'm also gonna do Jake." And so we have Macho Chucky that takes these knives and chucks them at this door because we have both Devin and Jake who are kind of looking on through these little holes. So in the doors, as Jake and Devin were kind of wanting to help out Good Chucky, but then the doors kind of slam. So we have Macho and we have Good Chucky. And so Good Chucky is stating that he thinks that he has like changed. He's come over a new leaf. And so they end up kind of circling around. And we have a good point of having the Macho doll kind of start beating up Good Chucky, and we have the good doll who ends up getting kind of his nose bleed and stuff like that. But when the Macho doll ends up coming closer to Good Chucky, we go on to have the good doll who ends up kind of hitting Macho Chucky in the nuts and has him going flying. So Good Chucky used to grab all these grab all these knives and start flinging the knives into the Macho doll, and Macho doll ends up kind of being on this door, and like he's hanging there as if the doll is getting crucified, and has one in the chest and two in the hands. So it seems, all in all, like this doll is now dead. So finally, both Jake and Devin make it into the room after this is all said and done, because, of course, perfect timing, right? So Jake is to look after the good Chucky doll and start to kind of wipe his nose and so on and so forth. So Jake and the good Chucky doll leave, and all of a sudden Father Bryce comes in and sees that Devin is to have possibly put this doll up, and Father Bryce is like, "Devin? Huh? Like, I guess you need to go on and get a more swift punishment than you did before." So, because Devin is to take one of the blades out of the doll and just be like, "Oh, Like, I didn't do any of this, but, like, since he was the only one there. So, we had Father Bryce that takes Devin into this church to start reading the Bible. And we get to a point where Devin reads this passage about a man lying next to a man instead of a woman. And so Devin just starts ripping this Bible, just rips all the pages because he's like, I don't give a about any of this. No. So we have, of course, Father Bryce, who goes on to talk to Dr. Mixter, Sister Ruth, and Sister Catherine. And so we have Father Bryce, who's come to the conclusion of, like, well, did you see what Devin did with this doll? And so Father Bryce is kind of blaming everybody that hasn't really done a bit of anything really to try to mentor Devin, because when were they doing that? So Father Bryce is to state to Dr. Mixter, because she's now back into this episode, we have Father Bryce is like, well, maybe Devin, like, doesn't belong here. Maybe maybe he should be more suited for, like, other, like, teen, like, outlets, like, basically like a juvenile delinquent kind of thing, more so than the school. And Dr. Mixture's like, no, like, let me get one more opportunity to work with him, and I think this might resolve itself. So Father Bryce is like, okay, after he's going on and he's kind of talking to the other sisters and so on and so forth. So come to find out, we now have Jake, who makes his way with the good Chucky doll back with Devin, Lexi, and Nadine. And come to find out, when Lexi and Nadine were going into the location that they had Trevor's body, we had Nadine, who goes on and, like, sprays Windex all over the body, so I guess it won't smell as much. Then come to find out, when Nadine and Lexi look for the body later, bizarrely the body's now gone, because they were planning on, like, burying the body or doing something with the body, but by the time that they go on to look for the body's strangely gone. So that's what I kind of thought was weird. So we have Jake that is trusting in this doll, but something weird that the good Chucky said kind of grabbed him. Because, of course, Jake was to hear from the good Chucky doll, like, something that sounded like something that his brother would have said. The brother who died. Where the Chucky doll was talking about like a Robin quote, or something about Batman, Joker, and whatever. So Jake was, like, a little bit uneasy about that. Like, okay, so is Chucky playing? Is Chucky not playing? But so when Devin goes back to talk to Jake, Devin is like, no, like, this doll is evil, like it's killed in the past, and so it doesn't matter if it seems like it's good, like, we still have to, like, handle it as if it's evil. And Jake is like, no, like, I think that was a different doll. yeah, it was the same guy, but like that was a different Chucky. So we have Chucky go on to talk to Jake alone, and so Chucky's stating it's like, well, like I did hurt people in the past, now did I? And Jake is like, well, yeah, but that wasn't you. Like, that was another you. And so Chucky wants to go on and have a fresh start. And by doing that, they figure out that he can do that by getting baptized. So Jake and Nadine go on to baptize Chucky. And supposedly now Jake and Nadine are going to be the mother and father, bizarrely, of Chucky. I know I'm bouncing around a lot, but like I want to just kind of get this stuff done instead of going on and just kind of mentioning it in the rhythm of the pattern or whatever, how the episode goes. So let's now go on into some of the Tiffany uh, Glenn stuff. So come to find out, we have Glenn, and Glenn is to still remember things from the flashbacks of the other films. So Glenda goes on to mention to Glenda, it's like, well, hey, did you kill the security guard? And Glenda's like, well, yeah, because I had to. And so Glenda's like, okay, all right. So this must be some kind of flash that I'm getting. So Glenda then goes on to talk to Tiffany, who she thinks is to be Tilly. And again, Tiffany, for the enormous amount of time, is still watching Liar Liar. So Glenda is trying to mute the movie so that way she can talk to Tiffany. And Tiffany doesn't want to go on and talk to Glenda. But then finally Glenn, my bad. There's freaking twins. They look the same. In all honesty, they just do. So Glenn goes on and is trying to talk to Tiffany, and at some point Tiffany is to slip that she just likes killing people, and sorry, it's just the thing that she likes to do. So come to find out, we still have Meg Tilly's presence here in this episode, and we have Meg who is starting to ask Tilly about her past. And so, since Tiffany does not know anything about Tilly's past, come to find out, Tiffany is to go on to speak with Tilly, who is to be within this doll. And so Tiffany is now trying to get information from Tilly. And so Tilly is desperately wanting chocolate. She's like, I want chocolate. So Tiffany's like, well, if you give me this information, I'll give you chocolate. We also have Tilly that mentions that she had gone on to do the voice from Family Guy, and I'm like, yeah, like, of course she did. Because I remember her being Joe's wife for the longest time. So, and it's cool that they reference that in this episode. Because also, when you really look at it, like, Stewie Griffin looks just like Chucky anyways. With the overalls and so on and so forth. Plus he likes to kill people, likes to kill his mother. but also he's like assassin for hire that we go on and see a number of different episodes. So we also had Tiffany that is to have told Glenn that Nika is to be Tiffany's lover or girlfriend, but is to also sometimes be Glenn's father. So when Tiffany does come back to talk to Meg and is telling this whole story to Meg about some guys that they had been with in the past, Meg goes on to tell Tiffany, it's like, well, that sounds like the plot from Blues Brothers. What are you talking about? And Tiffany's like, oh, that son of a... So, Tiffany goes back to Tilly and is to be so upset with her for lying and not telling her the whole truth about this girl's past. Both Meg and Glenn go on to make their way to see what Tiffany's up to. And that, of course, leads us to have possibly Meg realize that this person who is Tiffany may be an imposter, or Tilly is to be an imposter, and maybe Tilly could be this person in this doll. So what ends up happening is that Tiffany ends up losing her temper and is to kill Meg. Just starts stabbing into her feverishly, to where now Tilly is very upset that her sister is now dead. And so Tilly is making death threats to Tiffany and is like, I hate you, I hate you. And so Tiffany's like, oh, I'll shut up, just shut up or I'll make you starve. So now Glenn is very confused. And so Tiffany finally just goes on to give Glenn the doll of who she was before. He just hands her over the Glenn doll. So right after that, we have Tiffany and Glenn that hit the road, and we have in the back, we have a tied up Tilly doll, and we have a tied up Glenn, and so they're driving off, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So we have Lexi. We have Lexi in this episode who is tempted to just go and take a lot of drugs again. And so Nadine is talking to Lexi and is telling her, it's like, well, hey, like, you, like, I've made a lot of progress, like, why, like, stop now? If it feels like Nadine is to finally see that Lexi is to stop taking these drugs, why start doing them now if she's made so much progress? But also Nadine is to tell Lexi about this story where Nadine at some point was to have these different animals, like 5 of the same one, but still. So Nadine was to mention that Nadine had 5 gerbils. So come to find out, we had at one point where Nadine's mother was to die, and Nadine was to state that her mother probably didn't want Nadine to have any of these gerbils, but it was probably the only thing that her mother could realize could make Nadine happy, and so that's why she kept giving her these. And so, I guess because of that sad story of Nadine's mother dying right in front of her, we have Lexi that all of a sudden was to kind of hug Nadine, and I'm just like, well, why were all the gerbils dead? Like, did Nadine kill them all? Like, is there some dark past that we're gonna find out about Nadine? That we're thinking that she's all goody two shoes, and then we'll find out the opposite. I'm curious. So, speaking of more curiosity here, so we have Devin and Lexi who are talking together, and so when Devin was talking to Jake, he was like, well, hey, I want to get to the bottom of this. And so Devin is charging the phone, trying to see if any of the pictures that Chucky made is going to lead him to anything. So when Devin and Lexi thumb through these pictures yet again, this whole gallery of all these photos, come to find out they notice that there are Chucky body parts. And so it's like, okay, what are all these photos to be? And then Lexi and Devin realize that they're all leading to some trail of breadcrumbs that might lead them to another Chucky or another location. So maybe the Chucky's hideout. So we go on to have Devin and Lexi who follow these breadcrumbs, all these doll pieces, to find like a bunch of just doll pieces that are all have been damaged and whatever over time. So come to find out, we had Dr. Mixner, who is to be at the exact same location that this other Chucky doll is at, who is going on and torturing Andy. Andy's still alive. So we have this Chucky doll who I believe is named Colonel or Colonel. I'm gonna go with Colonel. That sounds pretty good. So we have the bald Chucky who now has these unusual this necklace with these ears on him, so he's freaking Norman Reedus bizarrely. And so this Chucky's going on and carving up these knives, gonna go on and torture Andy again. So I'm assuming all of these pieces from all these dolls were, of course, dolls from that whole truck from episodes before, hence why there's such a massive trail now. So Mixner is talking to the Chucky doll, trying to ask like what they're gonna do next. And so the last thing we end up seeing is this Colonel doll who's kind of working on Andy, and like that's it. Like that's all we really get to see to end this episode. So with that said, I hope that covers most of what happens in this episode. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I did forget about, because I'm sure that there will be. I'm trying to think of my brain if there's anything really left for me to state here. So with that said, I think I'm going to try and get out of here. So with that said, bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.